told a child's fable about the Grinch who was really unable to steal the cheer that the holidays brought and about the lesson that he taught. So if you lend me an ear or two, I'll tell you a similar story that's true. It's about a man who commits a crime and discovers a truth that withstands all time. It's a prime example of intellectual snobbery, and it came to be known as the Great Church Robbery. The church was known for its love and affection, and they invited folks from every direction. But to one neighbor named Mr. DeWitt, their invitations didn't matter one bit. DeWitt hated them for their Christian religion. He held no love, not even a smidgen. He considered their pastor to be a big fake, and their chanting church bells to make his head ache. Though he felt that way, not because of his head, but the fact that his soul was spiritually dead. So with a heart full of meanness and doubt, he watched Sunday mornings as the service let out, staring out of his window with cold, ugly sneer at their warm handshakes and smiles full of cheer. They'll all be returning, he said with a bark, for tonight's service as soon as it's dark. And then with their worship, they'll raise a commotion. But what it's about, I haven't one notion. They'll set the big church bell ringing, and they'll all begin praying and singing. They'll pound the piano and the organ too, and why they must do it, I haven't a clue. Why, for too many years I've put up with this stuff that's driving me crazy. I've had quite enough. And as he got angry, thinking how they would do it, he suddenly snapped, I must put a stop to it. Without all their church stuff, he went on with a growl, their bright, happy mood would quickly turn foul. Then the wicked idea hit his wicked old brain, I'll pretend I'm a blind man with glasses and cane. I'll steal all their things, and if anyone spies me in my clever get-up, they won't recognize me. Yes, he felt quite proud and thought himself wise. So armed with a plan and a tricky disguise, he cranked up his pickup and took off with a lurch and pulled up to the back door of the church. Determined that his entry nothing would block, he used a screwdriver to jimmy the lock. It's too easy, the fake blind man hissed as he tiptoed inside, cane clenched in his fist. Then he lowered his glasses and peered all around to make sure that no one was there to be found. These speakers, he said, that's the first thing I'll steal, as he loaded them into his truck, that old heel. Then he ripped up and threw out the pads on the pew. Yes, he took every comfort and the instruments too. Then he carried the songbooks, all he could have, and even the Bible was not above theft. When he had taken all he could rob, he was turning to go when he heard a small sob. Grabbing his cane, he spun around with a whirl, and there stood by the altar a tiny young girl. Who's there, he asked, tapping his cane. You see, I'm quite blind, and I don't know your name. My daddy's the pastor, and I'm Mary Sue. And with a trembling voice she asked, who are you? Just a friend, he said, no need to fear, as he motioned the little girl to draw near. DeWitt faked a smile and knelt down beside her, and then smiled back. Somehow, the room seemed brighter. You see, he lied, God sent me indeed, for even a blind man can see your need. So I'm taking the old and buying all new, and as soon as I'm finished, I'll send them to you. So he pulled the wool over her eyes with his sightless act and clever lies, and condescendingly patted her on the head. But he was taken back at the next thing she said. Oh, kind sir, I wonder if I might pray that the Lord would give you your sight. And before he could answer or move out of the way, she laid her small hands on his brow to pray. Dear Jesus, thank you for being so kind. And as you touch this man who is blind, bring the light to his eyes and help him to see. So give him this gift, Lord, and do it for me. And when she had finished, his throat was quite dry, and behind his dark glasses a tear dimmed his eye. And conviction fall upon him with a great weight. But he croaked, thank you, dearie, but now be late. So go on back home and don't say a word, or tell anyone what you have heard. And as he watched the pastor's little child, he felt a strange tug down deep in his heart. But he shook it off with a snort and a shrug, and as he was leaving, he threw up the rug. It was 6:30. Soon the church would be full, so he cranked up the pickup and away he did pull. Up the winding dirt road to the top of the hill, he drove with their stuck, where then he would still. Then he came to the top. It was getting quite dark, and he drove towards the cliff and he put it in the park. He jumped out of the truck and strode to the ledge and stood looking expectantly over the edge. They'll know by now, he said with a grin, that their services there have all been done in. They're wailing, they're moaning, and they'll all shed a tear. That's something, said DeWitt, something I wish I could hear. But he could hear a sound, quiet and low, rising up from the church in the valley below. But the sound wasn't tearful. Why, it sounded quite cheerful. Everyone there, to the smallest fellow, was singing their favorite songs a cappella. He hadn't stolen their joy, it remained. In spite of their losses, their worship was sane. Maybe their joy doesn't come from what's done. Perhaps, he smiled, it comes from someone. But suddenly his heart clutched with cold fear as he noticed the pickup had slipped out of gear. He rolled towards the edge, the rusty old clunker, and he leaped in its path and shoved hard on the bumper. But it wouldn't slow down, though his feet pawed the south, and for the first time in his life, he wished and prayed out to God. Lord, I know it was wrong all these things to take, so save them, and me also, for Jesus' sake. And then the light of heaven shone in, and Mr. DeWitt was born again. And he felt a strange power he'd not felt before, as he found the strength of Samson and more. He stopped that old truck, and he turned it around, and he hopped up inside it and drove down to the town. He pulled up to the church and brought back what he took, his musical instrument and every song book. Then he went to the altar, and beside it he knelt, and he praised the Lord Jesus for the peace he now felt. And he hugged Mary Sue as she climbed on his knee, for her prayer had been answered. Now he could see.